All right, welcome back to another episode of the CSUSB Advising Podcast. My name is Matt Markin, an academic advisor here at Cal State San Bernardino. And on today's episode, we're in for a treat as we have a whole panel of dedicated faculty with much to share about the Communication Studies major. It's a major with a few different concentrations, and we have many students who are interested in learning more about this major. So with us today, let's welcome Professor Thomas Corrigan, also Professor Brian Heisterkamp, Professor Theo Mazumdar, Professor Rod Metz, and Professor Matthew Poole. Thank you all for joining. So the first question we usually want to start with is to tell us a little bit about yourselves so that way students get to know that you are also human beings too, and you have backgrounds and how you got to Cal State. So who wants to start?
Yeah, I guess alphabetically by last name, I'm first, so I'll jump in. So my name is Thomas Corrigan, or TC. I'm an associate professor in the Department of Communication Studies, and I also coordinate our Master of Arts in Communication Studies. I teach courses in Digital Media and Society is the course I teach most often. It's also a GE course, so students who are in our media studies concentration take the course as a requirement, but it's also available across campus as well. So, and I teach courses in also in media industries in context, media institutions in context, and courses at the graduate level, such as qualitative research methods and political economy of communication. So my research is in that last area, political economy of communication, and another way of saying that is that I study wealth, power, and the media. So, for instance, just hypothetically, if the richest person on earth bought one of the most influential social media platforms, that would be something I would be interested in. Just hypothetically. I'm kidding, right? But Elon Musk recently purchased Twitter, and folks who pay attention to political economy, so wealth and power, that would be certainly a thing to pay attention to. So it's great to be here, Matt, and looking forward to talking about our major.
Yeah, absolutely. Welcome. And so let's see, Professor Heisterkamp.
Yes, so Professor Brian Heisterkamp. I've been at Cal State San Bernardino since 2001, and I teach primarily in the relational and organizational concentration, so courses like conflict management, family communication, interpersonal communication, nonverbal communication, that sort of thing, and do research sort of in similar areas, looking at sort of everyday discourse. So how I look at recordings of families having dinner together, parents playing with their kids, just to see how do we construct our relationships, our families, gender, different forms of parts of our identity through our discourse. Sort of, for me, it's the basic level of communication that we can understand how we develop relationships. And so it's important to me. I've got spouse and 2 kids, teenagers, so they keep me busy and active all the time. Thank you.
Absolutely. Professor Mazumdar.
Hi, I'm glad to be with you all. My name is Theo Mazumdar. I'm an assistant professor of communication in the Department of Communication Studies. I am in my 3rd year in the department. So far, so good. I teach primarily in the strategic communication concentration. I regularly teach 2 of the core courses in the strategic communication concentration. That is Introduction to Strategic Communication and Crisis Comm, which is a lot of fun, particularly with how fast information moves these days. I also regularly teach one of our departmental core courses, Media, Culture, and Society. And I sometimes teach the elective Persuasion. And this semester, I'm teaching a really fun master's level course called Special Topics in Public Relations, Strategic, Political, and Public Sector Communication. My research area and expertise is in political strategic communication. I'm really interested in 2 main trajectories in terms of my research. One is the manner in which digital cultures and digital norms are shaping, even disrupting strategic communication. And the other is using qualitative techniques, thinking through things like narrative analysis to unpack and better understand political campaign strategy. So I'll give you an example of some of the research I'm working on now, a study I'm just completing now and will be presenting soon at conference, is looked at 10,000 tweets of politicians, candidates for office in the 2020 election, who were using conspiracy theories as part of their campaign strategy. And so myself with 2 research assistants, graduate students from CSUSB, we waded through 10,000 tweets, and the goal was to formulate a typology of how politicians, what function politicians were hoping to gain, to use by invoking conspiracy theories. And I understand that as part and parcel of this digital environment we're in, this post-truth era, especially in terms of digital media and digital culture. But I'm glad to be joining the pod today, and I'm looking forward to talk more about the strategic communication concentration.
Yes, welcome. Let's see, Professor Metz.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm glad to be here as well. Thank you for having us. My name is Rod Metz. I'm an associate professor in our Department of Communication Studies. I've been here, I think, over 20 years. I can't even remember when I came in. Brian's good about that. I'm not very good about that. But I've been in the department for over 20 years. I teach courses in television and video production. I also am a critical theorist. So I teach courses in media, culture, society, visual communication, and film history. Probably a glimpse into what I do. Most recently, I actually won an award for a paper I wrote about Squid Game. So I think about media a lot in that way. And I fairly recently published a piece on producing media in non-production classrooms. So I'm always thinking about media and new media, and the bigger picture in what I was talking about earlier, the throes of this communication revolution that we're in. It's sometimes difficult to see, that old saying about, we don't know who discovered water, but pretty sure one of the fish. I mean, we kind of feel like that right now. We're in the throes of a major communication revolution and an epistemological revolution driven by communication technologies. And that has profound effects on society, on culture, and all the things that we do. And one of the things I wanted to highlight is that, on the one hand, we're in a place where we have freedom, the kinds of freedoms and media platforms that earlier media producers would only dream of. But now we have this almost democratizing, we used to talk about the democratizing potential of new technologies. And now we're in the throes of that. Everybody's a photographer. Everybody's a videographer. Everybody's a filmmaker. Everybody's a blogger. Everybody's we can do podcasts. We can all do that. We have the freedom to do that. That's an amazing thing. At the same time, we're caught up, and the potential for free expression and all those things that we love about creativity and all those things. But at the same time, it's kind of a mixed bag, because the very corporations that allow us to do that also survey us and make money off of our free expression. So, I think many of us are thinking about those things. I'm someone who teaches traditional kind of television video production, but I'm thinking about the ramifications of the communication revolution that we're deep in the midst of. And we hope that our democratic institutions will survive this. There's some questions about that. So very concerned about those things. And that's why I think many of us are excited to be in a major like this that's studying those things in almost in real time. It's amazing what is happening in terms of the history of media. All right. Glad to be here. Thanks.
100% agree. So last but not least, Professor Poole.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. And glad to be here. I am Professor Matthew Poole. I am currently the interim chair of Communication Studies, so I will be helping out for a couple of years. And I was the chair of the Department of Art and Design for 6 years prior to this. And in my professional work, I I say I'm an art theorist. I write about art. I'm not exactly an art historian, but it's kind of similar. And there's a few kind of crossovers with what some of my colleagues here do. What I research and write about is primarily the relationship between the production and reception of art and society. So politics and political economy are a big part of that. Specifically, I'm interested in the relationship of how art institutions, so museums and galleries and other art organizations in a capitalist system are operating differently over time. So I consider galleries and museums as a technology, as a medium, if you like, for cultures to reflect back to themselves what their values are, what they represent, what their aspirations are, and so on, and how they identify themselves as cultures, as communities, and so on. And I'm particularly interested of late. I mean, I do a lot of kind of looking back, to early conceptions of museums and galleries, princely collections, in the 14th, 15th century. What get called Wunderkammern, a German word for cabinets of curiosity, from like the 16th and 17th century, and so on. But more recently, spanning that history of several hundred years, more recently I've been focusing on the effect of neoliberalism as a political economic system on these institutions and on the way these technologies that societies have represent themselves, and how there have been various kind of inversions of principles that we still kind of take for granted, like the concept of the public and the private. Those have been largely inverted. And so I'm really interested in how the illusion of the public function of museums and galleries has now really flipped into a kind of private domain, and what effect that has on society.
Oh, wonderful. And thank you all again for being here. And I think one question we get a lot from students just hearing that there is a communication studies major is, well, what exactly is a communication studies major? And I think prior to recording, Professor Heisterkamp was mentioning, well, maybe we'll also try to add in with that misconceptions that also people might have about communication studies. So does anyone want to start off with that question?
I could start. I think, at the basis, what I tell my students is what we study in communication is meaning making. And I think that that's something that can apply across the concentrations. We just maybe study how that meaning is created in different contexts. So I'm in the relational organizational concentration, so I study it in terms of interpersonal, romantic, or family relationships. And others, study it, you'll hear about in different contexts as well. But I think there's, sort of this misconception about communication that either we're all about journalism and media, or we're just about public speaking. And so I don't think people really fully understand the breadth of, the sorts of things that we study in the discipline. And so that's why I think it's a great opportunity for us to talk about, the different contexts in which each of us study communication, and then therefore our students can study communication in those different areas as well.
I'd like to chime in on the meaning making, because drawing on someone like Stuart Hall to say something like, it's always a struggle over meaning, and that all communication takes place within relations of power. And so I think many of us have that on the front burner as well when we're thinking about communication studies. So I'll stop there and let somebody else take that up if they want. Dr. Corrigan.
I think that it's both communication studies can be very personally meaningful, but also very, socially consequential, right? So, Dr. Heisterkamp was talking about, family communication, right? And how families understand each other, misunderstand each other, right? These are sort of day-to-day moments of communication that have real consequences in people's lives, right? When we're talking about folks that are studying media studies like Dr. Metz and myself, right? Not only is it personally meaningful in terms of shows and sports teams and movies that people connect to their identity in really profound ways, but also as the communication revolution that Dr. Metz talked about is unfolding, we're also talking about that media experience just being a constant one, right? In terms of people scrolling social media, not just consuming but creating media content on a daily basis. It's just an intensely personal experience. And so, it's one of those things where you step into a communication studies class and it's not hard to find yourself in the course and the material, right? We're talking about things that everybody is engaging with and living through on a day-to-day basis. I would also, on a big picture, scale though, we're also talking about some extremely consequential stuff, right? If you look back over just the past couple weeks and months, we're talking about threats to democracy, right? And the ways in which misinformation are is related to things like the January 6th insurrection at the U.S. Capitol. We're talking about how people understand and respond to climate change, because communication is, whether it's strategic communication or mediated communication, we're talking about the ways in which people understand some of the most, fundamental issues of our times. Just the other night, I'm teaching a course on the local news ecosystem, and we were looking at some headlines of a shooting of a man by a sheriff's deputy in Moreno Valley, nearby Cal State campus. And we were looking at the headline and the way in which the headline de-emphasized the role of the sheriff in that fatal killing. And so, these are things that are, just extraordinarily important issues in people's lives today, in a big picture sense, but also in that personal sense. And so that's what I, sort of think about in terms of why our major matters. So.
Can I say something specific to our program? I think because I think we're a little bit unique in that we're very large, but we're also very small, right? So if you were at another university, you might see interpersonal communication and rhetoric in a completely different college. And you might see radio and television in another program, and film in another program, and journalism in another program. So one of the unique things we do here is we're kind of a big umbrella, because we do include television and video, filmmaking, radio, journalism, multimedia journalism. We include all those things, but we also hew closely to the roots of the discipline of communication, as most of us understand that: rhetoric and intercultural, interpersonal communication, relational communication, public relations, or strategic comm. So the thing is, we're, in that sense, we're large, although we're kind of small in the bigger world, but we're large. But at the same time, we're small in that if you come to our program, you want access to a television studio, you can walk right in, you can get a camera, you can go to edit bays, you can learn how to do that stuff immediately. You don't have to wait till you're a senior chomping at the bit to get to access to equipment. You got immediate access to equipment. So that's one of the great things about our program. We're very broad. And that's, sometimes that's to our detriment, because people say, well, what do you do? Well, we do everything. No, you do nothing. No, we do everything. We do everything. We do a lot of things, and we do a lot of things well, but we also are small enough to allow students access immediately to all of the toys that we have. There's no waiting around. You can come right in and go right to it. And I think that's in journalism or radio or television or any of the other activities we have on campus. So that's a big plus for our program. I think a downside is that a lot of students, even on our campus, don't realize all the things that we do. And so we're always trying to, get that word out. Oh, there's television over there. There's filmmaking over there. Yeah, there is. So I'm always surprised when I hear those stories from students like, oh, I'm a theater major, but if I'd known you had film over there, I'd have been over there. So, I mean, I actually hear those still today. So we're a unique program, and we cover a lot of ground. So that's what I share that as well.
Yeah, I think that could be a good segue into the next question, because you're saying communication studies encompasses so much, so many different areas, and within the major, there's these various concentrations that you offer. So I want to start off with Professor Mazumdar, if you want to give your thoughts connecting to this on your thoughts on communication studies, like how you would describe it, but then also to chat about the strategic communication concentration.
Thank you very much. Yes. In my opinion, all of our concentrations are overlap, and importantly overlap. And so one of the things that I often hear from students is, well, I originally signed up for this concentration, but I feel like my interests are totally over here now. Well, that student may productively transition to a different concentration, but it doesn't mean that classes taken in the first concentration are not of use or are not very relevant, because what we're dealing with are really different facets of communication that kind of are interwoven together that have great importance for society, right? So an example of that is from a class I was just teaching recently in strategic communication. I was talking about how we can think about critical theory, a critical perspective in strategic communication, thinking about marketing campaigns, right? We were looking at the promo video for the new Barbie movie and thinking about gender normativity and racial normativity and heteronormativity. And in our role as intellectuals, as well as preparing people for good careers, we have to think through the ramifications of marketing campaigns that reinforce power structures and dominant ideologies. And so I view all of our concentrations very much as interwoven and relevant to one another. In another example, interpersonal communication is increasingly mediated, and strategic communication entities like brands are intruding into spaces that we would usually consider interpersonal, like messaging chats and so on and so forth. And so I very much view all of our disciplines, all of our fields and concentrations as connected. In communication, that's one thing that students don't often realize right off the bat, is that the thing that binds us most throughout our concentrations and fields is a focus on media. And so, for example, in my research area in strategic political communication, unlike political science, we think about the media as independent actors, and we think about the influence of the medium and strategic choices given those media and how those play out in, for example, campaigns. And so the common entity that really binds our thinking, that brings us together throughout the very broad discipline of communication, is really a focus on media, mass media and newer digital media, and media that is on the horizon. Strategic communication is at a fundamental level goal-oriented communication. It's communication that's done on purpose to try to help achieve a goal for an organization or for an individual or for an entity. And so that means that we somewhat uniquely have a dual mission, and that is to both build students' intellectual foundations and make sure that they are understanding the theoretical and conceptual richness of communication and of strategic communication scholarship, but also to equip students for careers in things like public relations and marketing, in advertising, in brand positioning, and social media strategy. And so in strategic communication, we are at the intersection of practice, thinking about how campaigns, what they really look like and how they're built, and theory and concept. And so that is, I think, what most separates our concentration of strategic communication. We often, our classes are filled with real life examples. I was just talking about the coming up Super Bowl halftime show with Rihanna, but also trying to contextualize those marketing efforts, those advertising, those PR efforts with theory and rich concept. I'll talk a little bit more about the details of the concentration in a little bit.
All right, thank you for sharing that. Maybe we jump to the relational and organizational communication concentration. So turn over to you, Professor Heisterkamp.
Sure, thank you. I'll just tell a quick story of how I came to the communication discipline. So in my undergraduate career I started majoring in business and business management, and I found that I wasn't good at math. I hated math and accounting. And so I discovered communication, where there's some math involved if you're into quantitative research methods, but for those students who are in the College of Business and you're not doing so well in your math classes, or you're thinking about, maybe you have the perception that, a degree from the College of Business will help you, like in terms of a career that you might want to go into, such as, management or consulting or something of that sort. Come over to communication, because we've got courses that are designed to help you be successful in the business world as well. So, we have, we teach our students about, not only the interpersonal family context, what sort of communication, is effective in the family environment and romantic relationships. One of the things I study and talk about in my classes is work-life tension, and how do you balance the tensions between your work life and home life and school, and whatever the different tensions that you might have in the organizational setting. What are some effective leadership styles, conflict management approaches? What are some effective ways to supervise employees? So we really, prepare students for a variety of careers in the profit or nonprofit sectors, whether that's, in management, sales and marketing, development areas. So those are the sorts of courses that, careers that we help prepare students for in the relational and organizational concentration.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. And then if we want to jump to for media studies, so with Professor Corrigan and Professor Metz.
I'll go ahead, Dr. Metz, and then throw it to you. So the media studies, and it might help. Brian, you just gave a little bit of Dr. Heisterkamp gave a little bit of an explanation of how you got into your area. That might help also for understanding media studies too for me. So when I was a graduate student at Florida State University, it was shortly after the invasion of Iraq in 2003, and when that unfolded, one of the big revelations in the following couple of years was that the news media really got the story wrong, right? That there were not weapons of mass destruction, that there was not a connection between Saddam Hussein and 9/11, and basically the foundational premises for one of the most consequential things that a country can do, which is to go to war. Just the argument didn't hold water, and additionally, the news media didn't hold people in power accountable for getting their facts straight, right? And so for me, it was just a really foundational moment for focusing my interest in communication studies and a critical take on communication and media studies. And so, I think when we think about what media studies is, that's a somewhat helpful, entry point, because media studies is concerned with the media, right? And oftentimes we hear this term, the media, and we use it interchangeably with something like the press right? And or it might, refer to television and radio and film and newspapers and those sorts of things. And absolutely, that those institutions are foundational to what we pay attention to in media studies and how we understand the construction of meaning socially, right, among cultures and societies through these technologies. Dr. Metz was talking earlier though, about how there is this communication revolution unfolding, this technological revolution that has, we haven't abandoned focus and attention on news and entertainment by any means, right? But there's also this development of what some folks refer to as participatory culture, right? The creation and consumption of podcasts, right? Like we're on, of tweets, right? Of blog posts, of Facebook status updates, and thumbs up replies to them, right? And sometimes it can be sort of sloughed off as frivolous sort of things that people do with their free time, but it is an extraordinary amount of time and an extraordinary amount of attention, right? And it is it's becoming one of the most important ways in which we understand ourselves and the world around us, right? And so in media studies, we're interested in how people and organizations, some of which we refer to as the media, right? But not exclusively, use these communication technologies, right? To share information and ideas with each other, and in doing so, construct their understandings of themselves and the world around them. And so it's a rapidly, transforming area, though, and I think, if there's something that might be a challenge for some of the faculty members teaching in areas like this, it's that your course almost transforms on a term by term basis, right? So I'm teaching a digital media and society course this term, which is one of our core courses in the media studies concentration. And just a few weeks ago, this company called OpenAI, which is funded not exclusively but heavily by Microsoft, released this new technology called ChatGPT. And it's a chat bot where you can ask questions and receive very human-like answers. And I say human-like because it is convincing, but not necessarily accurate, and sometimes quite biased and even toxic. But it's certainly an incredible new technology for communication, and it's technologies like it and others are going to have really profound implications for how we communicate and use media to communicate. And so, that example, I think, gets at just how quickly things are transforming, and it makes our classes just really fun and exciting and interesting. And so that's sort of my take on media studies. The one thing to note, though, is that media studies, we don't just study media, but we also make it. And there are several tracks of courses in media production that play a really important role. And Dr. Metz can speak to this better, but my sense is that you can't really understand how media work unless you make it. And so that's why having production components built into our media studies concentration is really important to us.
Wow, that's such a beautiful way to segue into my portion. But and actually, that's absolutely true, because doing media actually demystifies the medium. And so you understand, you begin to learn, and you acquire an aesthetic language and a critical language, a critical media literacy language, because you quickly understand that the form too is a kind of content that's communicating something. The lens focal length choice, the composition, the color palette choices, the sound design, the editing, the pacing, the rhythm, all those things communicate something too. It's not just the content. And so one of the big things we do, one of the great almost default things that happens when you're teaching production is that you demystify the medium. You allow students to become experts in manipulating all of those parts of the form that also communicate things, right? It is a manipulation. It's all a manipulation when it comes to film and television. But that manipulation is ideological in part because it's so invisible. You're unaware that the color palettes are affecting how you're responding to something. You're unaware that the lens choices of this director or cinematographer is shaping how you are responding to that image. And so that is a key moment for anybody learning to demystify the media practice. So absolutely. So it's like a critic. It becomes automatically an aesthetic. You learn to articulate that aesthetic language, and you learn to also become a kind of critical viewer and maker of meanings in media. I wanted to hang around a little bit in the, I don't want to take too long, but I want to hang around a little bit in the media studies part too, because there's a famous line, I'm surprised we've gotten this far without saying it. Marshall McLuhan famously said, or infamously said, the medium is the message. And so that's one of those things we all are all driving home. And I see also a critical thread running through all of these concentrations. You hear this critical thread running through all the things we're talking about. Well, if we say the medium is the message, and we say television is the medium, what's the message of television? Well, the message of television, there's a lot of things, right? Well, fewer people are going to the movie theater. Fewer people are now going to the theater. Fewer people are going to their Wednesday night church thing. They're staying home and watching television. So they're isolated, blah, blah, blah. If we say the medium is the message, and what's social media message? Well, it's distraction, it's surveillance, it's exploitation, it's depression of teens who are depressed because of their, they can't get enough hits on their social media, whatever. So that's the message. Forget content. The message is what the medium is doing to you and doing to us. And those are precisely the kinds of things that we talk about. Now, if I can quickly go into just quickly into television production, and like Dr. Mazumdar, also students are trained with specific skills in production. So they could get a job in television, they could get a job in film, they could get a job in radio, and they could, so they have these skills. Absolutely. But I think one of the most important things about that is that we always have an eye towards the critical side as well, even when we're producing things. And we're also very much aware of the medium as the message. And then we'll get to what the content means a little bit later. So anyway, so I teach traditional television production classes and video production classes. So I teach students multi-camera control room directing, live television, how to be a control room director for live television. That includes switching, audio, camera operator, floor manager, assistant director, graphics people. So students learn all of those positions. And then when we go to electronic field production, or I teach students how to shoot single camera film style for post-production and for editing and post-production. And so we teach how to shoot for continuity editing and how to shoot for complexity editing and montage editing and all those different kinds of montages. So we have a very traditional, in that sense, we're very traditional. At the same time, they always have that critical aesthetic language that goes along with that. So I'll stop there and maybe come back later.
Yeah, and like many of you are saying, and actually, someone want to jump in, add something else to it?
I was just going to add, Matt, if it's all right. We also have, production-oriented classes in journalism and multimedia journalism too, which are really great. So there's news writing and reporting, there's multimedia production, social media, content production, and so on and so on. And that's a really fantastic growing area as well.
And students get jobs in traditional TV land or traditional film land, but guess what? Oh, can you be the social media person for, oh, you're doing social media in TV. Oh, okay, I can do that. So it's just, as we've said earlier, it's a continually evolving thing. But our students keep pace with it. And the other thing I want to talk about is, I said earlier, everybody's a photographer, everybody's a videographer, everybody's a filmmaker. But what we do is, like, we provide you with the wider context, the critical skills, and the aesthetic language in order to articulate what it is you're doing when you're doing those things, even though a lot of that you're just doing intuitively. Well, hey, that's rule of third stuff. That's the golden section. Let's go back and talk about some of this stuff coming out of the Renaissance in one point linear perspective. So if you don't know that, if you know that while you're doing what you're doing, that's great. You are an informed, educated maker of media. If you don't know that, you're just do-it-yourself stuff, and that's fun, and we like that. We like that freedom and all that stuff. But I think one of the things we do is just provide a language with which to articulate what it is you're doing. I can tell you what I'm doing with my color palettes. I can tell you what I'm doing with this lens choice. Those things. Right.
Yeah. And like many of you have already said, the communication study is very broad. They're learning a lot of different skills, but then also a lot of it overlaps as well. And one of the questions we get from a lot of students is, well, what areas can I go on with this particular major or within this particular concentration? Many of you kind of alluded to in some of your answers. So if you want to expand upon that, or what areas you've seen some of your students graduated in, where they've gone on to, anything you want to add to that?
Yes, please. I'd like to talk a little bit more about strategic communication. So I just want to give students or potential students an understanding of what the courses would look like in the concentration. And so we have 5 core courses within the strategic communication concentration. These are both broadly situated to think about different fields within Stratcom, whether that be public relations, marketing, advertising, social media strategy, but also geared more towards public relations than some of the other fields due to our departmental history and some of the expertise of our faculty. And so our core courses are, Introduction to Strategic Communication, News Writing and Reporting, Writing for Public Relations, Strategic Communication Campaigns, and Crisis Communication. And one of the really cool things that students can do as part of our departmental requirement for 6 units of experiential learning is that they take you will get course credit for, and also work in Coyote PR, which is our student-run public relations agency. And Coyote PR works with real organizations to help them develop campaigns, to develop reputations, their reputation, to enhance their reputation, and also to build mutually beneficial relationships with various entities. And so, that ability to gain course credit and also work at a real PR agency is a real benefit to many of our students. I also want to mention that we have a campus chapter of the PRSSA here at CSUSB, which is the Public Relations Student Society, a student association, and that is our campus affiliation of the PRSSA, whose faculty, advisor is Dr. Jess Narin. And that club meets once weekly and works on real world issues and does things like goes to nationwide and even international conferences to share their work and their findings. And so, as you can see, we have a very practically oriented and yet conceptually theoretically interesting concentration. I'll just give one more example of that, and it is from my own Introduction to Strategic Communication course. And in that course, the final assignment that I give is that students can select an organization of their choice whether that is in hotel and hospitality management, whether that is in a movie studio or entertainment type of company, whether that is a governmental organization or a fashion organization, and create a proposal for a strategic communication campaign that they create. And so we do a lot of applying strategies, concepts, theories to real world practical workplace pursuits and problems, like creating communication campaigns. And so our graduates, our students, go on to do a range of things. Some go on to work in social media strategy for private sector companies. Some go to work in entertainment organizations in the LA area. A really interesting position that a student of ours got recently was to be a public affairs officer for the San Bernardino Police Department, which of course also has a great importance placed on public relations and strategic communication. More of our connections work for NASA as press officers and public affairs officers, communicating about the importance of NASA's work. So a whole range of entities, organizations, even individual brands like celebrities, whether they are in the private sector or the public sector, are types of careers and jobs which we equip our students for.
Wonderful, thank you.
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Add also, I'm the internship coordinator for the department, and Theo was mentioning the 6 units students can take for experiential learning, and internships is one of those opportunities. And just to give you an idea of the sorts of things that students do with their internships, I've had a student who works in his church to help develop whoops, I think we're still here, yes.
Yeah, but if you can, Professor Heisterkamp, if you, because you froze for a little bit, if you can start from the top again with your answer.
Okay, sure. So I'm also the internship coordinator for the department, and internships is another opportunity that students can earn units for towards that 6 units of experiential learning requirement. And so just to give you an idea of some of the things that students have done, I've had a student work at his church to help develop the youth program. Another student connected with a family-owned upholstery business, and the owner wanted to develop his social media presence. So the student helped that owner, get on Yelp and do other social media outreach to help him with his business. Another student who's working with a nonprofit who is helping unaccompanied minors who are coming across the border. And so she's helping that organization in their placement of youth who are coming across the border without family members or parents. Another student's working with a company in their sales and marketing team. So it just gives you an idea of the depth and breadth of the types of careers that students can go into in any of the concentrations, whether it's relational, organizational, or media studies. Could you hear me? I hope you could hear me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
You're good. Yeah.
May I, since we're on this track, may I follow up with that a little bit? I do want to mention that there's a system-wide CSU Media Arts Festival that's held every year by the CSU, the powers that be in the CSU. And every year we encourage our students to submit their projects to the CSU Media Arts Festival. It's a great experience just to have the ability to, the experience of submitting your work to a festival like that. So that in and of itself is a value. But in 2019, we had 3 students who won an award, and in 2020 we had three additional students who won an award. And it's highly competitive because we're competing with all these big time, film and TV programs in the CSU system. And there are much bigger programs than ours we're competing against. So it's always a great thing when our students are involved in that. So I did want to mention that. Along those lines, some students go to graduate programs. I'm sure some of the other faculty would talk about this as well, both as scholars, but sometimes we send students to MFA programs in filmmaking. Several students have done that. One of my our graduates who got an MFA from Chapman in producing actually was a associate producer and field producer for that new Showtime documentary Boys in Blue. I had a student who was a post-production supervisor for the CBS TV series Mom. One of our former students was for a long time the producer of Jay Leno's Garage. So there are a lot of places where students go for terminal degrees in film production or television production, or graduate school for MAs or PhDs in communication studies. And we have students. I mean, I had students like they're not even into car racing, but they go hired by Lucas Oil and they do camera work and stuff for race car stuff, and they travel across the country and they do live television for race cars. I have students who go over and do the internal video production work at Dodger Stadium, and so there's just a range of things that students can do once they learn some of those skills. So anyway, just thank you.
Hey Rod, thanks for mentioning the Lucas Oil pipeline. I always forget about that one, but it has been a really interesting and valuable route for students. And so some things that I'm thinking about. So in media studies and media production, obviously we've got students who are going into the professions that you might expect, right? Journalism, film, broadcasting, and the proximity to the Los Angeles media market, and not by any means not to poo-poo the Inland Empire media market itself. We've got former student of mine who's an on-air personality at KFrog Radio. There are students who are doing awesome high profile and also behind the scenes stuff in media all over the area that we're certainly very proud of. One thing I think is interesting though when it comes to, because I know that when students talk to their parents, right, parents are oftentimes they want to know what's the specific job that you get with this specific major, right? And one thing that I always like to highlight is that when employers are surveyed across all industries, okay, we're not just talking about public relations and or HR or media, journalism, etc. We're talking stuff as technical, sometimes as petroleum engineering, right? When employers are surveyed about what they're looking for in prospective, job candidates across the economy, number one and number two answers consistently are communication and critical thinking, right? And those are the things we do here, right? That's at the heart of every course that you take. And so I know that sometimes that can be hard to say, look, I promise the things you're learning here are going to be valuable, wherever you go and whatever you do. But it's absolutely true, right? I had a student who reached out to me the other day, and he's working in a law firm and was talking to me about some of the things that he was doing in one of our research methods classes that was communication focused. And he said, I'm so glad I had that from, for what I was doing in law, but, other areas, politics, technical fields and the like. And so I wouldn't, if you're interested in communication, it can be a major that's for you, even if you're not necessarily interested in going into media or public relations or HR or training and development or whatever it happens to be, right? If it's just a topic that you're fascinated about, you're still going to get useful skills for the fields that you want to go into. I want to, before we go on to other topics, I just want to briefly underscore, Dr. Metz mentioned students going on from undergraduate degrees to graduate programs, and there are there are great graduate programs in communication studies across the country. We have an MA in communication studies here in our departments that I'm the coordinator for, and that is a route that students who, once they get done with their BA, they have more that they want to explore. They want to explore it at the next level of depth and understanding, and that's the sort of thing you can do in a master's degree. And those students then go on to careers. We sort of have three main trajectories, at least out of our program. Some students go into public or private sector communication. Same at the undergraduate level, right? But we have MA students who go on to public and private sector communication at Microsoft, Pepsi. I was talking to a recent graduate who is in media relations for Inland Empire Health Plan. And she was doing that during the pandemic, right? And you can imagine what an interesting job that would be when you're managing a health plan's public communication amid a global pandemic. We've got other MA students who go on to teach at the community college level. So teaching, obviously, right, is communication centric, right? And so they're teaching courses in public speaking, teaching courses in news writing, teaching courses in intercultural communication. And then we've also got some students who they start in our BA program, they do our MA program, and then they go to top doctoral programs if they want to keep studying on. Just over the past 3 years, we have had MA students who have gotten funded doctoral positions at University of Oregon, University of New Mexico, University of California, Irvine, Northwestern University, University of Illinois, Champaign-Urbana. I'm going to leave somebody out. University of Colorado Boulder. If you want to, if a life of academic research and praxis is something that you're interested in, you can from our BA program go on to get an MA and head on to doctoral studies. So that's undoubtedly a route.
Yes. Let's say it's. Oh, go ahead, Professor Poole.
I was just going to add a couple of things. Thanks, Matt. Yeah, I totally agree with Dr. Corrigan, and that's a great explanation that he gave of all these different opportunities. But the affinities between communication studies, the kind of similarities and overlaps with other majors, other areas of study on campus is really wide. The affinities with some of the majors in the business school, in the Jack H. Brown College of Business and Public Administration, are really, really obvious and clear. And even, over to the art department where I work mostly, there's such a lot of overlap that if there are any students who are undeclared, they could come and talk to, if they're interested in art or if they're interested in marketing or public administration, come and talk to us about maybe doing a minor, maybe doing a double major, because what's taught in communication studies is specific, but it has these capacities to inform and develop and improve students' chances in job markets and further study and so on, really broadly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry. I feel like I would be remiss in my duties if I did not mention we do have one of our graduates who won a David Lynch contest award and got a scholarship to continue his MA degree at David Lynch's school filmmaking program. But I bring this up because this student won a Student Academy Award. And that is a profound thing to win. And I actually had the experience of going to the event with him when he received the award, and there were over 17,000 submissions that year internationally. And of those 17,000, 17 people were selected as finalists, and he was one of the finalists. It was an amazing accomplishment, and he's one of our former students, and he also teaches part-time for us. So that's good news. The other thing I want to say about that is, like, when I went to the ceremony, I didn't realize that that they had been the winners, the 17 winners of the 17,000 submissions had all been together in Hollywood because they came from all over the world for the event. So they all got to do Hollywood stuff and they all got to do all this stuff. So it was just an amazing event. So it's pretty rare, I think, that any program has a Student Academy Award winner who is a graduate of that program. So I have to say that out loud. All right. And the other thing I was saying, I think Dr. Heisterkamp lost his connection. I don't know if he's trying to get back in. But anyway, thank you.
Now I'm glad that you did mention that, and to be mindful of time too. I think the minor question, I'll if anything, maybe we do a part 2 to go over that. But to just a couple questions left. If, like, let's say students listen to this and they're like, this all sounds fascinating, but now I really don't know which area I want to go into because I want to do all of it. Is there an intro course a student could do that you would suggest, like the Comm 2101? And if so, what would a student be learning in that class?
On Intro to Communication Studies, it's a course where you've got a chance to explore the different concentrations that we offer in the department: strategic communication, media studies, relational and organizational communication, and also, think about the important theories that we use across communication studies to make sense of the meaning-making processes in each of those distinct areas, right? In the course, students also learn about the different career pathways into, that they can enter into after they get done with their BA. And you've got a really good chance after taking that course to understand where you might head within the major between these 3 different concentrations, or if you might take a mix of coursework between 2 or 3 of them.
Awesome, thank you. And yeah, I think that's actually an excellent answer for that. And to
I don't know, but
hey, no, it sounded good to me. and to combine these last 2 questions as we end, Professor Mazumdar was mentioning the PRSSA. So anything you want to highlight regarding your department in terms of resources like clubs, or if they had questions, what's the best way to get in touch with the comm department?
Matt, I can say a few things about that, but my dog is making some weird noises, like he's right here. He's going to want to go out soon, so if it happens, I might have to start again. You tell me if you can pick up him when he's making these weird noises. He's just sat here looking at me.
Yeah, I can hear a little bit, but we're used to that.
Yeah. I mean, students can, go to the Comm websites, so csusb.edu/communication studies, or just Google CSUSB communication studies, and there's a page specifically dedicated to all the clubs. There are several. There's a film. Damn, he's doing it really loudly. Sorry. Let me go back. Okay. So from www.csusb.edu/communication studies, or just Google CSUSB communication studies, and there's a page dedicated there to all the clubs, and there are several. There's the film club, the PRSSA, Public Relations Club. Okay, he's driving me nuts. I'm sorry. This isn't going to work. I'll just list some more. I've got it open here, so I'll continue the list. So yeah, the PRSSA, the Public Relations Student Society of America. There's the Local Matters television station, the Broadcasting Club. There's the forensic team, which is the debating team, although during COVID that necessarily had to go a bit quiet, but we're hoping to revive that soon. There's Coyote Radio, which many students know about. It's the campus radio station, which also has a studio over at the Palm Desert campus. And there's a digital media club. And also Dr. Mazumdar mentioned Coyote PR, which is actually a class. It's the practicum in public relations, where students essentially kind of do their coursework as producing public relations material for that agency for clients. So there's really tons of tons of opportunities for students to get involved, try things out.
Yeah, I like to follow up because I think that was the initial spirit of what we used to call practicum credit. I think we now call experiential learning, but there's like there's 6 units, 2 units each of practicum credit. And so you can go and see if you like radio, and you can go and see if you like television and local matters, or you can go and see if you like print journalism or multimedia journalism in the working for the campus newspaper or PR or any of those other areas. So you get a chance to, and ideally you would take, spread those out. And then some people, we allow students to repeat. So if you like the radio station, I want to do radio again, you could do it for another total 4 units or something like that. But that's another way to explore your interest, right? And I think that's the spirit of the practicum or experiential learning thing. It's like, okay, let me try PR, let me try television, let me try radio, let me try print journalism. I think that's what we want students to experience, or the part of the reason we have that laid out in that way. So that there's another answer to that interest thing.
All right. And I think that's it. So thank you so much, everyone, for being on and joining us for this podcast episode. A lot of great information, so a lot to share with students, but thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules for this. Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure. Thanks, Matt. Thanks a million.